There's a lot to news to get to. I will get to all of that news today, especially in Israel. I will cover the Fed cuts. I'll cover the economy. Like I do every day, we're a breaking news show. If anything happens, I tell you about it. But voting began in Pennsylvania this week. And on Saturday, it begins in Virginia. So I have written a column over at foxnews.com, and I'm making this monologue, which we'll put over at my YouTube channel, so that you can have in one place something to remind yourself as to why to vote for Donald Trump and Senator Vance. The former president is going to get my vote in Virginia as soon as I get to the in-person voting, which begins on Saturday morning, and I hope that you will do the same. I put all of the arguments in one place. Now, I know the odds favor the former president if you believe in Nate Silver. He's got him up 60% odds of winning, 40% odds of Kamala Harris. If you look at the national polls, Harris has got a slight lead. If you look at the state polls, they're tied. And if you look at the internal, Donald Trump's doing very well. The new Gallup poll is a stunner. The unfavorable rating among independents for Kamala Harris is 60%. She can't win with that number, and Gallup, of course, is the gold standard. So I made all my arguments against the backdrop of a pretty good feeling among Trump supporters, but it's going to be a roller coaster. It always is. I've done this many times. My first vote was in 1976, and believe me, there are very few blowouts. Very, very few blowouts, and when they occur, you don't even know that they're going to occur, with the exception of 2008, when we all knew that President Obama was going to become President Obama. They don't look like a blowout until the day after. So I wanted all of the arguments. You have to persuade people, not just tell them vote for X or vote for Y. I want to persuade you why you should vote for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And it really begins. And my emphasis is on, in my column, the fact that you don't only elect Donald Trump and J.D. Vance or Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. You elect 3,000 people. The most important of those 3,000 people, they're political appointees. They bring 3,000 people with them. The most important of those people are the national security team. Right now it's Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, and Jake Sullivan, and they've been a disaster for the world. It's going to be, if it's Donald Trump, we know what his national security team was at the end of his first term. It was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, National Security Advisor Robert C. O'Brien, Director of National Intelligence John Radcliffe. Rick Grinnell had been there almost the entire time. He left at the end of the administration to go over and work on the Trump campaign, but serious people doing serious things. He didn't always hit a home run, but he batted over 600 when it came to appointees. We don't know anything about Kamala Harris's national security people, except her national security advisor to the vice president, a man named Philip Gordon, about whom I've heard very troubling things. But what about those 3,000 people? Those 3,000 people go into the federal agencies. There are 160 federal agencies. Most of those 3,000 people do not go through advice and consent. Now, I've held jobs in the federal government in the Reagan administration. I was a wet behind the kids lawyer coming off of the D.C. Circuit, and I went into the DOJ as a political appointee for both William French Smith and Ed Meese. Then I went to the White House counsel's office for Fred Fielding and Richard Hauser. Then I went over to NEH. Then I went to OPM as their general counsel. Big agency, 6,000 people. Then I got nominated for and confirmed by the Senate as the deputy director of the Office of Personnel Management. I ended up as the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management. Those last two jobs are the 7 I held in the executive branch. My clerkship on the D.C. Circuit doesn't count. That's the judicial branch. Those 7 jobs in the executive branch, 5 didn't require anybody's okay except President Reagan and his personnel department. 2 of them required that I have gone through Senate advice and consent. It's very few people that get a check on them. So Donald Trump gets to bring his 3,000 people. We know who they are. Kamala Harris gets to bring 3,000 people too. She is a radical from the San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley world that is insular, and to call it deep blue is to not fully communicate how radical that environment is. That's what you need to focus on. That and some issues. Right? She's going to bring 3,000 radicals to Washington, D.C. from San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley, and some from Hollywood, where she's living now. Radical. And they're going to do radical things. They're going to drive the country far to the left. The policies are also very different. Beginning with taxes. Donald Trump wants to extend and revise the tax code of 2017. He wants to add no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime. He wants to restore the state and local income tax and property tax deduction, which, by the way, I think is a good thing. Some Republicans don't. I had that argument and lost it when the tax bill was undergoing its development with Kevin Brady as chairman of Ways and Means. I thought it was wrong to take that away. And I'm glad Trump has changed his mind on that. But my choice for Trump is primarily driven by my faith in the Constitution of the United States and my deep unwillingness to see it amended and the rule of law upended by mysterious legislation to somehow reform the court. It's just court packing. FDR tried it in 1937, and it blew up in his hands because Americans don't want to change the rule of law. And I don't want an amendment to the Constitution about the court, but mostly I do not want them to pack the court. That's the rapid end of the rule of law in the United States if that happens. It would change the separation of powers. It would change everything. Now, my knowledge base is not just my time in the Reagan administration. I dealt with the federal government for all the years I practiced law, from 1989 until I retired in 2016, all the years I've taught at Chapman Law School's Fowler School of Law since 1996, all my years in journalism beginning in 1990 on KFI Radio, 10 years with PBS, 25 years with Salem, this studio, this radio show, this television show on the Salem News Channel. It's all experience. I read, I talk. It's what I like to do. It's why I do the news. And when I come up to, I'm very serious about the future. And I'm 68. I'm worried about my 3 children, their 3 spouses, my 6 grandchildren. I am worried about the Chinese communist Xi Jinping. I'm worried about Putin. Really worried about Iran, even though Hezbollah, its puppet in Lebanon, took a couple of body blows this week with exploding pagers and exploding handheld radios. Who knows what else they're going to be able to explain. The bad guys are reeling as Israel takes them on, in the same way that the United States took a long time to go from being surprised at Pearl Harbor to the first battle at Guadalcanal, until the war actually turned the Pacific at Midway. Long time for us to get to North Africa, longer to get to Italy, longer to get to D-Day. It takes a long time. These wars go on. But we can win. The West can stay free and healthy and productive. We can win the artificial intelligence race, the supercomputing race, if we get energy, domestic energy production. Not only natural fossil fuels, liquefied natural gas, oil. We got to build nuclear plants, or we're not going to win the AI battle. Trump believes in growth. He ought to combine a bunch of agencies into the Agency for Growth and Stewardship. Department of Interior, Department of Energy, EPA. Put them all together. Bring in the Forest Service from the Department of Agriculture. Put Doug Burgum, if you heard him on the show yesterday, put him in charge of it. But the very important thing I want you to know is the quality of the people and how much everything changes with every administration. Everything changes. And the president, you see him on TV, you see her on TV. I don't know if it's going to be Trump. I don't know if it's going to be Harris. I don't think we will recover the lost lead with the People's Republic of China and Xi Jinping and the CCP if Kamala Harris wins. She's not a communist agent. She's a radical. She will cut defense spending. I don't know what we're supposed to deter China with if she wins. But I've just got to say, when you have someone like Trump, who's basically apolitical, he's running on a moderate agenda. He doesn't want an abortion ban. He doesn't want any of the nutty stuff the Democrats are saying he wants. That's just campaigning. He wants to bring basically moderates and conservatives, those 3,000 people will be very mainstream, from Goldwater Republicans to Rockefeller Republicans, everyone in between, and a few Democrats, like he had Peter Navarro. Hope they don't have Peter Navarro in the second term. He was a Democrat. But who do our enemies fear? Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Key question. They do not fear Kamala Harris. They will roll on. China will roll on into Taiwan, into the outer Philippine Islands. And we know as well that Russia will not be deterred. We know Iran will not be deterred. Our ally Israel will be in danger. I've got some Kamala Harris tape from her address to the Hispanic caucus yesterday, but I got to precede it with J.D. Vance, who was speaking in North Carolina on Wednesday yesterday. This is what J.D. said, cut number 38.
Part of the reason I want Kamala Harris to do more interviews is because there's so much comic relief in it. I really do believe that every time she answers a question, we gain about 100,000 votes. So I do selfishly wish that Kamala Harris would give more interviews to the North Carolina media, because then I think this state wouldn't even be close come November. And I don't know if you've seen, my friends, some of these interviews that she gives, but they'll say, well, Kamala, give us your specific plan. What is your exact plan for how you're going to lower the grocery, food, and housing prices for American citizens? And she'll say, well, did you know I grew up in a middle-class family? Part of the reason I want Kamala Harris to do
it's true. Now, let's go to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus last night. Cut number 34, the vice president talking to the Hispanic caucus.
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
Can we do that again?
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
One more time.
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
A little bit longer, cut 35.
When we talk about our children, I know for this group, we all believe that when we talk about the children of the community, they are the children of the community.
You see, that wasn't at the Hispanic caucus. That was at Children's Hospital. So that's one of her new lines. Okay, back to the Hispanic conference. Cut number 36.
In fact, recently I was in Nevada. I'm in these streets, let me tell you, I'm everywhere.
A little bit of the laugh, but she caught herself. Cut number 37.
We're Bay Area. 106.1 KMEL. That was our local radio station.
It's unintelligible. Play it again. See if you can understand what she's saying.
We're Bay Area. 106.1 KMEL. That was our local radio station for hip-hop.
Okay, it's a local radio station for hip-hop that no one in the world... before you do a national debate, as I did in November, as I did in 2015, 16, the last thing they remind you of is please don't reference things from when you were growing up or things from when your kids were growing up or things that other... don't talk about the Cleveland Guardians or the Cleveland Browns, even though the Guardians' magic number is now at 4. Having won last night and the Royals losing. Don't bring that up because people in the audience won't understand it. I can explain it to you if you listen to me, know what I'm talking about. Donald Trump did a rally at Long Island yesterday, and he said directly to Kamala Harris following the second assassination attempt this. And by the way, this is clear and direct. Cut number 33.
Tonight, let me also deliver a message straight to Kamala Harris. Have you heard of her? Who, by the way, was just rated by far the most liberal senator in the U.S. Senate, more so even further left than Bernie Sanders and Pocahontas. Pocahontas. She's more so. Elizabeth Warren, she's more left than Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. Let me also deliver a message straight to Kamala Harris, the radical left Democrat politicians, and the fake news media. Look how many are there. We've got to get our media back in this country. We've got to get them back. But the message is it's time to stop the lies, stop the hoaxes, Stop the smears, stop the lawfare or the fake lawsuits against me, and stop claiming your opponents will turn America into a dictatorship. Give me a break.
Thank you, Donald Trump. A direct message to the media, direct message to Vice President Harris, and it's one that needs to be sent. The Republic will be fine. The Constitution will not change under Donald Trump. The Constitution will change under Kamala Harris. Donald Trump released an ad yesterday, like in lickety-split. Kamala Harris gave an address to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, in which she said Donald Trump will do a massive deportation. All right, that's what she said. Lickety-split, Team Trump, turn around this ad, cut number 44.
Now they have pledged to carry out the largest deportation, a mass deportation, in American history. Imagine what that would look like and what that would be.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Yeah, I just love these ads. I don't know who, whether it's Chris LaCivita or Susie Wiles who came up with the idea. All we have to do is use Kamala Harris's own speeches in real time. So she gave the address to the Hispanic Congressional Caucus sometime on Wednesday, and on Wednesday night, Trump drops this ad. Play it again, cut number 44.
Now they have pledged to carry out the largest deportation, a mass deportation, in American history. Imagine what that would look like and what that would be.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
I just love that so much. All right, let's go back to former President Trump in Long Island yesterday, cut number 30.
And so I say to the people of New York, with crime at record levels, with terrorists and criminals pouring in, and with inflation eating your hearts out, vote for Donald Trump. What the hell do you have to lose? What do you have to lose?
That is a great message. What do we have to lose? Selena Zito, voting is underway in Pennsylvania. She joins me by phone. Internet has failed in her home. Good morning, Selena. How are you?
Good morning, Sunshine. How are you?
I'm not surprised. Pittsburgh, we're going to have to work on the infrastructure in Pittsburgh.
I live in the country, so sometimes this happens. I guess that's why I was not surprised when I saw all that money that was supposed to go to broadband in rural Pennsylvania. They didn't do anything with it.
No, did you get any of the 9 electric vehicle charging stations? Did any of those come near you?
No, did not.
So, Selena, do you have a pager or a handheld mic, walkie-talkie?
No.
Good. Just checking on you. This is a wellness check on you, Selena. Now, I next want to ask you, I have laid out all my arguments for voting for Donald Trump this morning in Fox News, and I did so today because voting has begun in Pennsylvania. The new Gallup number says Kamala Harris has a 60% unfavorable rating. Yesterday, the Fox pollster on with Martha McCallum said Hispanic Pennsylvanians favor Donald Trump by 8 points. What do you think is happening in Pennsylvania? The key state is the Keystone State in 2024.
Well, I've been writing about this for a while, and I've been on your show talking about this. Pennsylvania has made a consistent rightward turn, but gradually, since before 2016, since 2010. And you just see the evidence of it in the polling. Now, I will tell you this. In 2016, if you remember, the polling did not show Trump in a favorable place. It absolutely did not. But my guiding force was 2 things. Interviewing people, however anecdotally, on the ground in the counties that I thought were going to change, but also the Gallup poll on the direction of the country and favorability of Hillary Clinton. And those 2 things helped me consistently believe that he was going to win my state, even though the evidence, outwardly, right, in particular in the larger elite institutions, told us everything different. And I am in the same place that I was in 2016. This year feels very much like 2016 and very little like 2020. And if you look at the story that I just did about the movement of Pennsylvania's voter registration, the new numbers that came out on Monday, that holds up.
That was a stunning column. Would you review voter registration for Republicans has skyrocketed in the Keystone State?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has changed by a whopping 300,000 people going from Democrat to Republican, and some going to independent since 2020. That is massive. And by the way, in terms of the Hispanic population, if you go to Berks County, which is where our largest Hispanic population is in our state, I believe, at last count. You could correct me on that. It could be Lehigh, but it's right in there, right? Berks County, Lehigh County. There are, 4,000 more registered Republicans in Berks County than there is in there are Democrats, by the way. Berks County, home of Taylor Swift, since everybody likes to throw Taylor Swift around, that's where she grew up. So, here's the thing, the Democrats, this is the Democrats' blind spot when it comes to voters. They keep throwing around the word white working class, white working class, white working class. It's not white working class, it's working class. They are so fixated on dividing people by race, where the working class is voting shoulder to shoulder because of their working class, not because of race. So you see it with Hispanic working class and you see it with Black working class and white working class. They are moving to the Republican Party, and nothing shows that more than the Teamsters, non-endorsement yesterday.
Yeah, the Teamsters voted rank and file overwhelmingly in favor of Trump, but the leadership said we're not going to endorse because they don't want to go against the traditional Teamster support of Democrats, and they were elected, and they've gotten cozy with Democrats. And to do so, I understand it. When the Chamber of Commerce decided to support Democrats in 2020, they lost all influence with Republicans forever. And the Chamber of Commerce is ruined because they went against their brand. When you break your brand, you break your brand. The Teamsters brand is Democrat. Now, they may not realize it, but the Teamsters have become Republicans, but the leadership isn't in a hurry to do what the Chamber of Commerce did, break their brand. Selena, in terms of the Springfield, Ohio story, I have seen a story that there have been an influx of Haitian refugees granted temporary protective status, not just in Ohio, but in places in Pennsylvania, which has resulted, again, Pennsylvania is not racist. Pennsylvania does, however, have schools. They have a certain limited size, and they don't have a lot of French-speaking teachers, and the costs have been extraordinary. Is that story that I saw about a Pennsylvania town one that is familiar to you?
Yeah, Charleroi. It's in the Mon Valley. I
don't know where that is. Where is that?
Oh, okay. The Monongahela Valley. Think John Fetterman.
Okay.
Okay, this is, where all the steel was. This is where all the industry was. And Charleroi is this beautiful little town on the side of a hill. It's just very, very pretty. However, it has gone through, like most Rust Belt river cities, has gone through a lot of deconstruction because of the loss of revenue in the tax base. Now, when the problem in Charleroi is the problem that any town has when you have an influx of population, but you don't have the social services and you don't have the tax base to support it. In particular, in the school district, right? You have an influx of people who speak a different language, and it's not just one language. It's French, it's Haitian, it's all different kinds of languages, and the teachers don't know the language, and so they need that support system that costs money. There's not a lot of money coming in to the school district in Charleroi because the tax base, i.e., industry, has left, including Anchor Hawking, which is leaving to go to Ohio. And
Well, that's good.
So that is where the stress and strain is.
Well, I did see this story, but again, I always caution people, just because you saw it on the internet doesn't mean it's true. There wasn't a source quote. The family was talking, the husband and wife were talking in a hallway to a reporter, and it didn't have identification. I did not know. I trust Selena and her reporting. So the Springfield story is, in the 2020 census, it had 58,000 people. 20,000 new people have moved there. Many of them are Haitian, which is fine. They have protected status, which is fine. Some of them went to work, which is great. But most of them had children who speak French, and many of them can't drive. And the impact on Springfield has been disastrous. And people stand up at the city council and they yell at them because they can't get into an ER. They can't file their paperwork. They can't get a community college course. These are very small impacts for the protected class. They can't understand what this means. But if you can't get a community college course, you can't get the associate's degree that you need to be, for example, an LPN.
Right. So the largest problem is that the city planners, the people in charge. I understand why you want more of a population because, as you know, a lot of these old river towns, a lot of these old rust-bound towns have lost population. And so they want to get more of a population in the town. However, you have to be able to support that. And so the onus is on them. And so they should have secured funding to be able to have interpreters for these little kids who don't understand English, and the teachers who are trying to maintain, a teaching, an ability to teach everyone. And so that's, I think, where the frustration comes.
Absolutely it is. And I believe that Donald Trump's going to win because of that frustration and because people are concerned. 10 million in the last 4 years. What's the next 4 years with Kamala Harris? I want to add, by the way, it's not about the Haitians. It could be 20,000 Canadians. Then we'd have to hire people who could translate Canadian. I barely speak Canadian, and I've got in-laws who are Canadian. But, we love the Canadians, but we still need translators. You can listen on any of my 480 affiliates or watch on the Salem News Channel. If you're watching, you'll see Noah C. Rothman right now, senior political writer at National Review, podcaster extraordinary. He's on Commentary Podcast this week. He's always on the editors. Not always, most of the time on the editors. And Noah, you are ubiquitous, and I'm glad because you're a voice of reason and the next generation. I want to get your response to two stories. First of all, everything exploding in Lebanon. On Tuesday, on Wednesday, this morning, Hezbollah struck back. They have injured 8 Israelis in Israel with tank weapons and missiles. What is your guess? Because none of us know. What is your guess as to what Israel's plan is for southern Lebanon?
Yeah, none of us know is the right way to look at this. My assumption was at the outset of this operation that it was prepping the battle space for a larger incursion, the incursion that we've all known had to happen if we were going to return these 100,000 Israelis to the homes they evacuated after October 7th and have never returned to. To not do so would to functionally cede Israeli territory to a terrorist group in southern Lebanon. But we haven't seen that. What we did see is a second wave of these attacks. And you would have to assume that at this point, Hezbollah knows that just about all its communications equipment is compromised, and they will adapt. So I can't imagine that there will be a third, fourth, fifth wave. Perhaps that's a failure of imagination on my part, given the complexity and sophistication of this operation. Who knows? We can be surprised again. But we have not seen indications that ground operation is given the go-ahead. And now there is a window of opportunity that isn't going to be open forever. You've disabled something like 2,000-3,000 of these fighters out of an estimated 40,000-50,000 fighters that Hezbollah can mobilize on the ground. That's something you have to take advantage of. It's a window that's open. It's not going to be open forever. And if Israel doesn't act, I would be concerned that they're going to
The last shoe to drop. Dr. Oren or Haviv Redigur, one of the two, told me they've got to take care of the Hezbollah tunnels, which are longer, bigger, stronger than the Hamas tunnels. But the great advantage for the IDF is that those tunnels don't have Israelis or Americans or other nationalities in them. And they've got some tricks up their sleeves for those tunnels. So I think part 3 we won't see, and then we'll see a ground invasion. That's my own particular guess. I don't know anything. Let me ask you generally, if you are a friend of Israel, and I mean a true Zionist, Christian or otherwise, obviously Jewish Zionists are very common, but there are lots of supporters of Israel and lots of supporters of Zionism who are not Jewish, like me, like you. What do you think the difference would be in policy between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris towards Israel?
Well, I think on balance, you'd have to say Donald Trump would be far better for the state of Israel, just based on his record. And you would have to say that Kamala Harris is giving every indication that she is going to pander to a very small minority, a loud but small minority of Americans who are hostile to Israel's exercising of its right to self-defense. She's running ads right now in Michigan, campaign ads, not PACs, where she's highlighting portions of her Democratic National Convention speech in which she drops the part where she says she supports Israel's right to self-defense and says merely that this is some sort of a tragedy, a disaster on the ground. It has to stop. There has to be a deal. She's conveying to this constituency in Michigan that she is going to be skeptical, critical of Israel's efforts to defend itself in its borders and outside of its borders. And I think we have to take her at her word. She's given no indication that she really understands the conflict. It's like interrogating an inanimate object when you ask her at the debate, for example, well, if there's no deal to be done because Hamas has rejected 5 of the last 5 overtures, what are you going to do? And she says, well, you just need a deal. Got to have a deal. She seems to have devoted either no thought to the conflict or doesn't want to tell you what she thinks about the conflict, both of which are disconcerting.
We've got to have a deal is one of her 6 answers. She's like a bad jukebox with only 6 choices, all of them bad. One of them is we have to have a deal. The other one is I grew up in the middle class. I mean, there are a half dozen of them. Now, yesterday she went to the Hispanic caucus and she gave a speech which Donald Trump's team, which is pretty nimble, immediately picked up on. But I want your reaction both to her comments and to the Trump ad, cut number 44.
Now they have pledged to carry out the largest deportation, a mass deportation, in American history. Imagine what that would look like and what that would be.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Your response, I gather, Noah, is that it's funny, which is a very good live. You hadn't seen that before?
I had not. No. That dropped last night. That was a good. There was no comic beat there. That was a form of sprung logic that just hit you in the side of the face. No, I thought that was clever. To really overthink this, she's not wrong. Republicans should be concerned about the extent to which the deportation of 7 million illegal immigrants, necessary though it may be, will be a traumatic experience. And the images that will be produced from that will not look good and will reflect poorly on Republicans in office. They should be prepared for that. Nevertheless, public wants that. Voters seem to want that. The polling suggests, and even the macroeconomic data suggests, we simply cannot absorb the number of people that have come into this country. It has become a real source of frustration for communities large and small across this country. So highlighting that is very good for the Trump administration now. But it could be a Pyrrhic victory if they pursue this policy. She's not wrong. The images that will emerge from that operation and the Democratic efforts to demagogue that operation, I think, would be quite successful.
No, I have no idea what the Trump administration would actually do. For your benefit, I'm a border hawk since 2004, and I'm a regularization dove. If you're in this country, I want to regularize your status. If you're not violent and you're productive and you're working, I want to make sure you integrate. I want to try and assimilate. I don't want to deport anyone unless they're violent and really simply cannot be assimilated. I also want to spread the burden. And you're too young to remember this, but when the Vietnamese refugees arrived in the United States in 1975, they were distributed across the United States to welcoming communities. My parish adopted a Vietnamese family and did everything we could for many years, and they are fully integrated in the life of Warren, Ohio. I really think Americans are kind of where I am, border hawks and regularization doves. Am I rose-colored glasses here?
I think that's kind of where I am. I would imagine that's roughly the median voter's position, is that this is untenable. We don't like this situation. It can't continue. However, those who are engaged in a moral panic, I mean, you're right about bringing up, for example, the refugees from Vietnam, some of whom, by the way, Joe Biden opposed the introduction of these people from Vietnam. He said they were criminals and prostitutes. And that was a moral panic that was very popular at the time. It is, in retrospect, it is obvious.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah,
did not know
yeah,
that.
that's on the
Biden.
record.
Wow.
But that was the popular position to take in the early 70s. That was a populist line, and he was a populist figure. And today, we are seeing people demagogue the issue of immigration with the assumption being that the American assimilation engine doesn't work anymore. Absolutely false. You can count on the assimilative power of the American Civic Compact to integrate immigrants, especially those who want to come here, into the American Social Compact. It really does work, but it takes some time. And in the interim, it can be a very painful process, and one that is vulnerable and liable to get demagoguery. So I think you're probably right where the median voter is. It's roughly where I am. And I would imagine that a Republican Party that would soften the edges of some of the criticisms that it's making of immigrants in particular. You can criticize the immigration system. You can criticize Joe Biden's rejection of and neglect for the enforcement of American border law and immigration law. I do, and I think we all should. But at the same time, the people who come here from places like Venezuela, where they're fleeing socialist regimes, there's a big population there. It's very diverse. But the Republican Party should be friendly to people who are fleeing socialist regimes and trying to seek a better life for their families in free market economies. That's where their heart is. And I think if you were to appeal to that deep in the DNA of a Republican voter, they would respond to it.
I agree with you. And by the way, it's the Catholic default position to welcome the stranger. I also don't think it's all that difficult if you spread the burden. You just can't drop 20,000 Haitians in Springfield. In fact, if you drop 20,000 Canadians, I've been saying this week, into my hometown of Warren, Ohio, about the size of Springfield, that would be a problem. I don't speak Canadian. You don't speak Canadian. Nobody speaks Canadian.
Well, Hugh, that's why the busing program was so brilliant. When Greg Abbott and then eventually Ron DeSantis and then Democratic governors like Jared Polis got into the action by shifting these migrants north to the cities where they wanted to go anyway, free of charge. You managed somehow to get dark blue Democrats in the bluest municipalities in America to start aping the kind of immigration talk Republicans have been saying for decades, verbatim. It was like they made their arguments for them. That was why it was so smart and why it's so common sense. It illustrated the arguments Republicans have been making in ways that they couldn't.
Well and truly said Noah C. Rothman. I'm getting notes from friends who are Red Sox fans that they've never rooted harder for the Guardians. And that's because we knocked off the Twins again last night. Sorry, AM 1280 The Patriot. Great affiliate. I love my friends. Sorry, Chad the Elder. The Guards are busy knocking the Twins out of the wild card race and getting the Red Sox into it. Guards are down to a magic number. They may have qualified for the playoffs last night. I don't care about that. I want the bye. They need some time to heal. They need to get Stephen Kwan off of the DL. They brought up Miles Straw. I'm sure this is all very important to you folks, but it's October baseball is everything I could possibly want, along with the Browns winning and the Cavs playing. I don't know of any better time of the year. I've only done it 3 times when in my lifetime. Formerly the Indians, now the Guardians, have only been in 3 World Series in my life, and they lost all 3, 1995, 1997, and 2016. And they were brutal series, but there's nothing like October baseball. Generalissimo, I'm not talking about the Guardians here, and I'm not talking about my PhD weight loss. I do want to talk about Dwayne's World for a moment. Do you ever on Dwayne's World do any sports at all?
I have not yet on Dwayne's World. I do very occasionally when I did the after show in the Universe. Until the election's over with, I'm pretty singularly focused on covering the political
Well,
stuff.
it's the only thing that relieves the stress for me. Now, on Air Check today, we'll talk about this, the ups and downs about talking about favorite sports team. This is not about the Guardians, not about the Angels. Do you love October baseball?
Yes, I do like October baseball. I love playoff baseball. I absolutely adore playoff baseball. Yes.
It
It's a
is
lot
so
more fun.
stressful.
It's a lot more fun when your team is actually in it, not eliminated. It's
True.
a lot.
It's just so stressful, but it does relieve the stress of the presidential campaign. We'll talk about that on the Air Check today. The Air Check's only available if you subscribe to the Universe. All right, that's it. You don't get it unless you're a member of the Universe. I don't get your texts unless you're a member of the Universe. Dwayne doesn't get your text unless you're a member of the Universe. It's our secret society. We are like the Carbonario. Not the Carabinieri, which is the Italian police, but there was a secret society at the time in the Napoleonic Wars, like the Masons, and it's a secret society. Universe members, secret society, but you can join.
Breakers.
Yeah, you can join if you want. You know what else you can do? You can go to 25truth.com because Kamala Harris keeps lying about Project 2025. What is it? It's the Heritage Foundation, big old think tank compendium of everything that everybody center right to right thinks and all of their ideas, and some of them are no good. Like nobody likes my idea, which is I would declare a tax holiday on 401k assets and say, if you bring your 401k assets out, and we will tax them at a flat rate of 10%, we will get a windfall that we ought to use to reduce the debt. All right, and then people would be able to move their assets out, not at their 28% or their 33% or whatever their tax rate is in the state. Preempt the state taxes. This would wildly increase productivity in California if they just said, okay, ollie in free, bring out your tax-protected assets that you put away in your 401k, and we're only going to tax them at 10%, and all of that one-time deal is going to go to reduce the debt. That would have a remarkable effect. We got trillions and trillions and trillions in tax-protected savings. If we brought it out, we could take maybe the 35 trillion down. We ought to do that. We really ought to do that. But Project 2025, if you go to 25truth.com, if you go to Project 2025, you'll see like all sorts of ideas like that. Trump might hate that idea. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. And he might hate me today. Some days he does. Some days he loves me. It's Trump. I don't care. All the names that the Heritage Foundation thinks ought to work for Trump are in there. All the ideas they think he ought to consider in there got nothing to do with Trump. Go to 25truth.com. All right, go to 25truth.com. Coming up, Christine Rosen. I'm trying to make her book, The Extinction of Experience, a bestseller. It ought to be like Alan Bloom's 1987, The Opening of the American Mind, The Closing of the American Mind. The Extinction of Experiences, Christine Rosen, is next, part 4 of my interview with her on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Christine Rosen is the author of a brand new book called The Extinction of Experience. All of my interview with her, which is 70 minutes long, is posted on my YouTube channel. I want everyone to buy The Extinction of Experience. Very easy author name to remember, Christine Rosen, because The Extinction of Experience will change your life and the lives of those around you in a very good way, as it has mine. Here is part 4 of my interview with Christine Rosen about The Extinction of Experience. I did not know until I read this book that there's a website devoted to fighting. There are so many bad websites that you apparently have visited that, everybody knows about OnlyFans, and I hope they don't go to it, but there are lots of strange, like Findery and the one with 6 letters, People Keeper, PPL, yes. KPR. I mean, there's weird stuff throughout this book. I wonder how you spend your day. However, I want to get to my.
I take a lot of walks to clear my head, I will say.
Golly. I have 2 2-year-old grandchildren. I have watched them both fall down steps. And I was thinking about that because it scares you to death as a grandparent. It's on your watch. You hope they don't break anything. Is it good for toddlers to fall down steps? Is it the kind of experience they need, Christine Rosen?
Well, there's a wonderful book written years ago called The Blessings of a Skinned Knee. So yes, the way that children develop understanding of both their own bodies in physical space and the risks and rewards of navigating physical space is by being in physical space. Not playing a video game on an iPad or spending their time trying to get the attention of the adult who's staring at their phone while pushing them in the stroller. They need those constant back and forth, both with the natural world. And in fact, the title of this book comes from a naturalist whose early concern in the late 20th century was that children weren't going out into nature and getting muddy and seeing nature in its glory and interacting and seeing animals. And then as they grew up, because they didn't have that experience, they wouldn't even know what they had missed. So when a species went extinct, it wouldn't bother them because they didn't even know what that was. Maybe they'd seen a picture of one in a book, but they had no connection to it in the real physical world. So I am very concerned about that. I think that we are, and again, people like John Haidt and others have been very, very good at arguing for specific policies that schools and state and local governments can encourage. But this is a job for parents. And so, in some sense, my book is kind of telling those parents, don't forget, we're modeling habits for our children as well. So we're concerned about them, but we're also engaging in some of these mediated behaviors that they see us doing. And so they're learning from us. So we should set a better example if we can.
Well, it convicted me. I'm guilty of absorbing museums the way that you discussed.
No,
There's
we
a
all do it.
very there is a very fabulous chapter on museums in the book, The Extinction of Experience. And I said, guilty. I got, unless it's Rembrandt, I'm not sticking around very long. If it's Rembrandt, I'll sit there forever. But other than that, I just, that's interesting. Maybe take a picture of it that I never revisit. And so I'm convicted by your book. So I say that only because it's not just for parents of children, though they will benefit from it. It's for adults who are being colonized by their technology. Second big question. My summer's guilty pleasure has been to listen for a second time to the Master and Commander series by Patrick O'Brien, recommended to me originally by David Mamet as being the best dialogue between men ever. And there are 20 books, and I've listened to it. I'm on book 18 now, the Yellow Admiral, the Yellow Admiral. And it occurs to me that when the Napoleonic Wars went, people traveled all over the world and fought the war everywhere. Ships were technology that took naturalists to places they had never been before. Voyages of discovery, they were technology, right? Ships were technology. Text was technology. Are we overreacting to just the latest technology, or is it the speed of the technology that is so unnerving to me? I don't know if it's unnerving to you.
Yes, I do think that the real qualitative difference now is the speed and the scale. So it's not merely that we have these tools that our period of adjustment. If you think about how long it took most Americans to have a landline telephone in their home, and then a television or radio, there were decades for the adoption of this technology. That has absolutely been compressed by our current personal technology. So that's one thing, is that our old-fashioned human brains have less time to adjust to the new norms and the new rules and the new ways that these technologies are disrupting some of our understanding of how to behave. But there's a second part of it that I think is new and that is more worrisome to me, and that's its absolute infiltration into private spheres. So the TV came into your home, but you could turn it off. Now, if you have a gaming system in your home, it can send actual feedback about your physical reaction to playing a game. Your screen can track your eyes on certain websites. The kinds of badges that some people in office spaces are required to wear by their employers can track their heart rate. So we now are bringing these tools not only into our private spaces, but onto our physical bodies. And and we're sending all that information back to someone, whether it's an employer, whether it's a private website, whether, as you brought up earlier, in China, it goes to the government. So I don't think we're at risk of that right now, but we are being habituated to the idea that a lot of our unspoken feelings, behaviors, and physical responses are totally useful information that tech companies or others should be able to gather. I think we should try to slow that roll, as it were, because what that reveals about our own emotional state and our own private inner world is quite vast. It's rather alarming when you realize what all of that data put together can reveal about another person.
It's also indicative of the fact, a good thing about human beings is that we do want to experience things, but for example, you have a chapter on travel and taking the risk out of travel and exploring a city. So I sent to my oldest friend, who we walked from Battery Park to 44th Street one day in New York. He'd come down from Boston. We had never done that before. And it was remarkable. That's 1981, though. We did that in 1980. And you talk about Farragut Square and the public space in front of the New York Library. I know both of those places very well. They have changed back after dark to being very dangerous places like they were in 1980. But the experience of looking up and counting, we counted for 10 blocks the number of places you could get food. And in 1980 in New York, it was vast. And we were observing, we were not looking at our phone. And you noted, and I told this story, I retailed your story already yesterday, about the number of people who run into each other and the fact that you were doing dangerous experiments in first person. Anecdotal evidence is evidence of anecdotes, but I love your anecdotes. Bumping into people and them getting mad and how you can diffuse them. I thought, you know what? That's absolutely right. I used to walk in New York, head up, in 1980, 1 million people, no one ever ran into each other. It is not uncommon to walk in, say, Old Town Boardwalk now or Farragut Square and run into someone, because or bicyclists run. I hadn't even thought about it, Christine, till I read about it. Did it surprise you when you observed it?
It did. So there are all these unspoken rules that are yeah, as embodied people we follow when we're in public space, and it's almost like a ballet to watch it work well, right? People cross very busy plaza, people avoiding each other, but that's, as you say, when you describe the walk you took in 1980. Though we were having a look up experience. We were looking up and looking around, and we were constantly navigating in space other human beings. We now all in public space are having look down experiences. We're also having these in museums and elsewhere, but we're looking down a lot. That small change from looking up and around to looking down has absolutely obliterated all the rules of public space. I did this sort of tongue in cheek experiment where I wanted to see if people felt entitled to not pay attention to others if they were on a phone. And they did. And we all do that, though, again, right? How many times has a human being been across a checkout counter from you and you're glancing at your phone, maybe there's something you want to make sure you didn't forget, but the message to the other human being is you don't matter. This connection I have here is more important than you are. And that might seem like a small thing, but en masse, when we all behave this way, we all become we become kind of petty tyrants in public space. So people get very testy if you interrupt their conversation or you bump into them when they're talking and looking at their phone. But I did that experiment because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't overreacting. And then it did, of course, make me more aware of when I turn to my phone if I'm waiting or things like this. Again, we all do these things. And that's why I'm not trying to condemn the experience because it's designed to keep our attention, but to maybe
Oh,
think about having more.
everyone's convicted. Everyone
Yes,
who
we're
reads
all
your book
guilty
will
in
be
this.
convicted. Everybody is convicted. And I will play one more part of my interview with Christine Rosen. But I remind you, if you want all 70 minutes as an introduction to the book and a prompt to buy The Extinction of Experience, just go over to Hugh Hewitt's YouTube account. Google YouTube, Hugh Hewitt. You'll find my account. I hope you'll subscribe because we put up interviews there. Nothing else, just interviews. And if you scroll down, or the whole show, Ben puts up the whole show at the end, and Harley always posts the monologue at the beginning of the program. But then you'll find all my interviews. And if you go back to Monday, you'll find the 70-minute interview, most of which was off air with Christine Rosen. And when you subscribe, you won't miss any of those interviews. They're vital to being smart. Because I talk to everybody. Coming up after the break, I'm going to talk with Jim Talent. We're going to talk about what Israel is doing and preparing for, and what China is doing right now. I'm joined by my friend Jim Talent. Follow him on X at Jim Talent. Good morning, Jim. How are you? Oh, Jim,
well,
I think you're.
How are you?
Oh, there you are. Okay. Jim, yesterday we had guests in town. We took them down to Bath, Maine, and on the Kennebec River to show them Bath Ironworks, where we build the Arleigh Burke class destroyer. And the Patrick Gallagher is about to do sea trials. John Basilone destroyer, is about to be out to sea. And there's another one. There are 3. They turn out 1.5 destroyers a year at the Bath Ironworks. In World War II, that one shipyard turned out 17. How do we get back shipbuilding capacity? We need it. We need those destroyers.
Yeah, we need more shipyards because the decisions that were made 25 years ago resulted in the consolidation or the retirement of many of them that we had. We also have to be effective in getting the ships we have maintained on schedule so we get them back in the water. That's particularly true for our submarine fleet. We have about 40% of those boats laid up, and some of them are years behind in their maintenance. So, yeah, we have to try and reverse the effect of 25 years of policies, and we have to do it as quickly as possible. And all I will say you is that I warned them. Okay, I'm not going to make this about me, but there was no theme more consistent in my service in the House and in the Senate than that we were allowing the defense industrial base to atrophy, and we would end up spending vastly more money than we would have had to spend if we had just kept it in place in the first place.
So that was a lead up to a question about the difference between Trump and Harris. I wrote a long Fox column on the 3,000 appointees that each of them bring. How different would the Department of Defense under Donald Trump be from the Department of Defense under Kamala Harris? Totally counterfactual, totally prophetic and speculative, but what would the Trump DOD Part 2 be versus the Harris DOD Part 1?
Well, there's no issue more important, I think, to Donald Trump, more at his core. And most politicians have a few issues that are really at their core than reindustrializing America. And in his case, I mean, the president obviously understands from his first term that a really good way to do that is to rebuild the defense industrial base. And I think he will appoint people, whether it's a Robert O'Brien or a Pompeo or a Gallagher or a Cotton, and people like them, not only in OSD, the Office of Secretary of Defense, but service secretaries also, and they're going to be the key people. I mean, it was John Lehman who rebuilt the Navy in the 80s, and he was the Secretary of the Navy. Obviously, Cap Weinberger supported him. So those are the kind of people we're going to get. Harris, I think, because of where she grew up politically in, is not going to have a feel for that, and is not going to appoint people who are anywhere near as aggressive. I mean, I just don't think there is a native sort of understanding of the importance of American power in her bones. So, I mean, that's one area where the difference will be the greatest. There's no question in my mind.
Senator, there's a lot of criticism of Trump for leaning on NATO to spend more. I think under Harris, the criticism will be she's not spending enough. She's going to define adequate down as opposed to Trump defining adequate up. And he wanted NATO to do 2% a year. We just fell under 3% a year GDP on defense. They both ought to be at 4%, but at least I know Trump will be moving up. I think Harris will move us down. Am I Chicken Little, or is that rational?
No, you're not wrong. And they did spend more when Trump was president. Every president up until Biden has gone after the Western Europeans in particular to spend more money on defense. The difference is that Trump had real results. I mean, you ought to get Rick Grenell on to talk about this. Now, it wasn't huge, but they began moving the trend line in the right direction under Trump. And it was precisely because he reminded them that alliances are a two-way street and that they're the ones who have the most on the line to spend money in order to defend Europe. It was a perfectly common sense thing to do. And
you're right about Rick Grenell. You're right. Rick put the statue of Reagan on top of the German embassy, and then he'd bring the Germans up and batter them about spending more money, and it worked.
This is an insight Trump had, and I was late to this game. This is an insight Trump had, that you have to do push-pull with allies. You have to be supportive of them when they're doing the right thing, but you can't be afraid to criticize them when they're not, and particularly when what they're doing is so much against their own interests. You remember what he told the Germans about relying on Russian energy, and they didn't like it, but somebody needed to deliver that message, and of course, Trump turned out to be correct. This was at the same time, by the way, when people talk about Trump and Ukraine, he was the one who imposed sanctions on the Nord Stream pipeline. Biden removed them. Trump was the one who armed the Ukrainians. Obama didn't. I mean, what Biden did was appease Russia from the word go in the first year. He rolled over the New START treaty without conditions. He gave Biden a summit without conditions, and he waived the sanctions on Nord Stream. So, I mean, it was Trump who was strong in Europe.
I know, but we're working against the combined forces of legacy media that are all just an extension of the Democratic Party. Everything in the House of Representatives may turn on my next guest, which is why I'm glad he is a veteran fighter pilot, Congressman Mike Garcia from California. His website is Elect Mike Garcia. He's back. Good morning, Congressman. Good to have you.
Hey, good morning, Hugh. Thanks for having me.
I don't want to overstate it. I don't want to understate it. You're always in, pardon the pun, a dogfight because it's blue California. How does it look out there, particularly with Harris going to run up a huge margin?
Yeah, obviously, spoiler alert: Harris wins California, but she's very well known out there. Not in a good way. Everyone has fully characterized her. So, her being at the top of the ticket for races like mine that are swing districts really is a net neutral. Obviously, we would have preferred to still have Biden be the Democrat nominee just from an enthusiasm level. But the Californians know her history. They know, when she was Attorney General of the state. This is when Prop 47, which was really the catalyst for the crime waves that we've gotten in California over the last several years, that's got her fingerprints all over it. So it's about a net neutral. We're going to be in a tight race. I'm in a district that's only 29% Republican, and so we're in a knife fight in a phone booth every 2 years, especially during the presidential race when you've got higher voter turnout. But that's all we've got to do is focus on our race and win.
Elect Mike Garcia is his website. Mike, how is the money? Because, Kamala Harris has raised millions and millions and millions. I don't know how much she's going to spend on your opponent because she's behind in places like Pennsylvania and Ohio and other blue wall states. I don't know if she's going to spend any money at all in California, so maybe that helps you. But how is your fundraising? And again, the website is electmikegarcia.com.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, they're raising about twice as much as we are. They went up on broadcast TV about 3 weeks ago now, in August, which is really early. So they are swimming in cash. It's from the top down. They've got this Act Blue machine that is low dollar. It's a clearinghouse for low dollar donations nationwide, and they funnel that money around to all their candidates, especially these frontliners. So we definitely could use the support. We can use the small dollar donations, large dollar donations, and we go up on air this week. And we've never had a cash advantage in any of my elections. It's not that we need to keep pace with them dollar for dollar. We just need to be able to go up with our message at the right time and be correct and be right on our message and the policies. And my voters are smart enough to understand the difference between a guy with a lot of money and a bad product and someone who has been serving them for 4.5 years now and doing the right thing for the country, and they ultimately come home to vote, and that's the important piece.
Would you remind people of the geography of your district, Congressman Garcia?
Yeah, this is North LA County, so I'm the only Republican in LA County. San Fernando Valley, the Santa Clarita Valley, if you're familiar with Magic Mountain, and then the Antelope Valley, which is Palmdale, Lancaster. We've got Plant 42, which is a high-end aerospace and defense facility out there as well. That's kind of the backbone of our economy, aerospace. So right on the northern edge of Los Angeles and a lot of suburbia, valleys.
Yeah, I like to remind people you're an F-18 pilot, so you can hit the ball. You can do night landings. You can thread a needle, so you can do this again. You've done it before. I am curious if the makeup of the district has changed ethnically, and it's always been a pro-defense district because so many people work in the industry, so many veterans are up there. What is the nature of the district this year?
Yes, it was definitely trending more blue. What's happening is the migratory patterns are people moving from the urban areas because they're tired of the homelessness and crime, and they're moving to the suburbs. And those folks are typically Democrats. And I would say that 3/4 of them that are Democrats are JFK Democrats that still do value security, that still support law enforcement, that believe in a strong national defense and either work in aerospace or know someone who does. So these people are folks who are still voting for me. We're not asking them to change their registration. I don't care about what party you're affiliated with, as long as you prioritize the country and prioritize your own security interests, your own security interests, you will vote for me in that case, and align your values with the candidate in that way. So it is getting more purple. It's full spectrum. About a third is Hispanic, and we get more than half of the Hispanic vote. And it's just a matter of messaging correctly and not making it about a Republican versus Democrat or Trump versus Biden conversation.
I think people love voting for veterans. I think they especially like voting for Top Gun fight Navy aviators. How long were you in the Navy, Congressman Garcia?
I went to the Academy in '94, came off of active duty in '09, so that was 15 years. And then I did 3 years as a reservist instructor pilot. So best years of my life, best career out there, and encourage anyone wanting to join the military to do so.
Now we have a recruitment crisis. That's what I wanted to get to. Why did you seek appointment to the Naval Academy, and how do we fix the recruitment crisis? I honestly do not know how we do it under Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it does require a change of leadership. There's three major things right now: is leadership, quality of life, and compensation. Right now, we are missing that leadership component. And usually, most folks will enlist or go to academies with two of the three things not being sufficient, but not with all three things being insufficient. Right now, the quality of life's not great in the Navy or the military writ large, and the pay is terrible. They're making a junior enlisted makes less than a fast food worker does, and about a third of our troops right now below E4 qualify for food stamps. So you've got terrible pay, crappy quality of life, and a commander-in-chief that isn't paying attention, and frankly, a Secretary of Defense who himself is MIA and not taking care of the troops. And now you've got a VA that has run out of money and has effectively broken its contract with the veterans because of these budget shortfalls that they had. I got that fixed this week. We were able to get $3 billion to close that gap before the end of the year, so our veterans don't lose their pensions. But all around, it's just a mess in the DoD and within the executive branch, and this is why we have record low recruitment, record low retention, record low readiness levels. Our ships are in disarray in the west side of the Pacific right now. In the South China Sea area, we're struggling just to get enough ships out there to go through security rotations to maintain a presence.
I believe I read that the Lincoln, I don't know if you ever served on the Lincoln. I believe I read that the Lincoln was supposed to go to the South China Sea. It's in the Middle East. I mean, that just must screw up everything. Yeah,
that not being able to depend on your carrier battle groups from a maintainability perspective, and not being able to deploy them with the way the COCOMs want them is devastating, and it's so much worse than what is being conveyed at the surface. So we're in it deep, and this is probably the most vulnerable period in our nation's history when it comes to military readiness and capacity as well. We have some good technologies coming online, but relative to China, we have a massive capacity gap.
Again, if you're listening, small dollars matter. They're hard dollars in the coin of the realm, in the argot of the language. You go to electmikegarcia.com. Has that picked up over 2 years ago, Mike Garcia? Are more people going to elect Mike Garcia than before?
Yeah, we're slowly getting more and more traction. I care about the constituents, obviously voting within the district, and then we care about fundraising at a national level as well. So we have, with all of the issues and drama, I think a lot of folks have seen me as one of the stable guys, one of the rational ones, and the adult in the room when it comes to issues like the year-end spending as well as Ukraine, leading on a lot of those efforts. So that money has picked up, and we're very thankful for it. We're very humbled by it. We need all hands on deck. And I tell folks, while I may live in California, my job is to prevent the country from turning into California, and it's very important to have a representative from California who understands that everything that has happened in California can and will happen at the national level if we don't check it. There's a twin sister to every terrible policy in California in Washington, D.C. that we need to kill before it gets signed into law. So that's where the support comes in, and we appreciate it.
I want to tell everyone, a lot of people claim to be Reagan Republicans. Mike Garcia is the real deal. ElectMikeGarcia.com, ElectMikeGarcia.com. Thank you, Congressman. AndrewandTodd.com are great sponsors of my program. They're very happy today. I'm very happy today. Anyone trying to buy a house is very happy today. The Fed cut the prime interest rate by half point yesterday. Futures are off the charts. And the 10-year Treasury has dropped down. I'm looking for it right now. I'll bet you it's under 3.8. It is at, let me get there. It is at 3.716. Now, that's not the interest rate you'll get, right? You got to add points to that. But it hadn't been down that low in all of the Biden years since they unleashed inflation. And remember, it was Biden-Harris who unleashed inflation. She's the last person in the room. She cast the deciding vote to destroy the American economy with 20% cumulative inflation and the American consumer and the American family. Kamala Harris voted for that. She cast 51-50. Republicans wanted nothing to do with it. We didn't need to spend the $5 trillion. The $5 trillion got spent, and it just courses through the body politic, and it created this inflation snake that the Fed has been hammering at and hammering at and hammering at. And yesterday, and I don't know if it's political, I hope it's not, Jerome Powell, Andrew and Todd were watching for Jerome Powell to come out, and he did come out, and he said that cut number 41, and this goes to andrewandtodd.com and your interest rate, so play cut 41.
So we've heard some speculation that you may be going with the federal funds rate to 3.5%, maybe under 4%. And there's basically an entire generation that has experienced zero or near zero federal funds rate. Now, some think we're heading in that direction again. What's the likelihood that cheap money is now the norm?
So this is a question, and you mean after we get through all of this? It's just a great question that we can only speculate about. Intuitively, many people anyway would say we're probably not going back to that era where there were trillions of dollars of sovereign bonds trading at negative rates, long-term bonds trading at negative rates. And it looked like the neutral rate might even be negative. So people were issuing debt at negative rates. It seems that's so far away now. My own sense is that we're not going back to that. But, honestly,
right, so that's what I wanted you to hear. AndrewandTodd.com keep telling home buyers, we're not going back. Some people were blessed to get a 3% mortgage. Some people were blessed to get a 2.5% mortgage. God love them. They're never going to sell those houses unless they have to. They're bursting at the seams. They get told to, and then they may not sell them. They may rent them because the cost of money during Donald Trump was so low. The only way to get back to that kind of an interest rate environment is to elect Donald Trump, of course. And in the meantime, you do the best that you can, and the best that you can is with andrewandtodd.com. You can call them at 888-888-1172. Andrew emailed me yesterday, and I read it on the air, that the 20 years dropped down to 5 something. And so that's great. That's terrific. Some of you have to do a total calculation of debt load cost carry. And I'm not an economist, but I know you're in debt. However, you're in debt. Car loan, home loan, credit card loans, loans to your buddies, your friends, payday loans. It all adds up to a global interest rate that you're paying on your debt. You may be able to lower that by refinancing. Even if you got a 3% mortgage and you got to go up to a 6% mortgage, you might be saving $100 a month. You got to call Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian to find out. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. Visit andrewandtodd.com. Don't guess. I'm just reading a Washington Post story and tweeting it out. The headline is Harris and Trump essentially tied in Pennsylvania post-poll finds. And my reaction to this is driven in part by, I like the Washington Post. I write for the Washington Post. I read it every day. But I don't trust its polling. And I remind people, Washington Post ABC poll of Wisconsin in 2020, days before the election, had Joe Biden winning Wisconsin by 17%. By 17%. All right, that's what the Washington Post ABC poll said. 17%. And that's voter suppression. Why vote if you're going to lose by 17%? Joe Biden won by 0.63%. All right, see, it's the Wisconsin. He won Wisconsin by 0.63%. The Washington Post ABC poll said he was going to win by 17% days before the election. 16.47% of Wisconsin didn't change their mind in 6 days. It was a busted poll. And unless and until pollsters show me a long record of accuracy, I don't believe them. I think it is particularly difficult to poll Pennsylvania, particularly difficult to poll Wisconsin for Trump voters. Very difficult to do so in Michigan. They are very reluctant to answer the phone. There is something called polling response bias. It is real. I'm not unpacking any polls. I don't unravel polling sample size or anything like that. I just trust Pew, P-E-W, Pew Research. And they have ratified there is a polling response bias. And I don't know how to get around it. Thank goodness my livelihood doesn't depend upon finding an accurate model of the electorate that's going to turn out and then finding that percentage of people in the electorate to tell me who they're voting for. It turns out that polling response bias shows, according to Pew, that older white liberal ladies like to take polls and give you responses. This is, say, as opposed to young conservative men who never answer the phone, even if it's when mom or it's 911. They just don't. They don't want to be polled if they don't know who it is, especially if they know it's mom. They don't want to talk to them, right? They text, they call. They're very hard to reach. Trump's demo is, I think, probably his key demographic subgroup in the business we sell. Our key demo is 25 to 54 males and females. I mean, that's the money demo. That's who you want to advertise to. Our key demo is probably 35 to 64, and that's great. We love them. And we love every listener. I don't care if you're 10 or 100. But I do not believe the Washington Post polling that Pennsylvania is tied. I think Donald Trump is ahead. But that's an intuition, and it's backed up by Nate Silver's modeling and his prediction market. I don't know if Trump's going to win. I think he's going to win, but that's based on 1,000 different factors, and I probably have confirmation bias. I want him to win. I explained at length today why I want him to win. But the reality is, and it's never going to change, that's the title of my Morning Glory, Why I Am Voting for Trump headline at Fox News today. The reason I want him to win is I'm worried about my grandkids. I do not want them to have a social credit score surveilled by the Chinese Communist Party and punishments and rewards doled out on what the CCP thinks. That's what happens right now to 1.3 billion people living in China. You get a social credit score if you're not a peasant in the outlands with no technology. And your social credit score determines if you get to go to high school and college, if you get to travel abroad. That's what happens in China today because of that guy. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, Xi Jinping is all for an Orwellian Brave New World disaster, a dystopian existence. I had Sebastian Lai on the program earlier this week, the son of Jimmy Lai. He is the most famous dissident in the world, and he should be much more famous. Great Catholic man. I wish Pope Francis would speak out on behalf of Jimmy Lai. But Sebastian Lai, his son, who's in exile in London, spoke to me. His father's been in solitary confinement for 4 years. He's 77 years old. He's got many more years to serve. They're going to have another trial. They're never going to let Jimmy Lai out unless the President of the United States and the Pope every day hammer away at Xi Jinping. Like Republicans and Democrats in the world hammered away at Gorbachev and at everybody else. Let Solzhenitsyn go. Let Sakharov go. Let Natan Sharansky go. You have to elevate the profile of dissidents like Jimmy Lai to get him out. And even then, I don't care. I don't think Xi Jinping cares because he thinks he's more powerful than the United States right now. You know what's going to get the world to rethink things? the last 2 days in Hezbollah land. I don't call it Lebanon. Southern Lebanon is Hezbollah land. And everything started blowing up 2 days ago. First, the pagers. All right, there's a story at the Times of Israel on how spies used a Hungarian manufacturer to pack all the pagers that Hezbollah had ordered to go low-tech and avoid surveillance by Mossad and the special IDF unit that does electronic signal surveillance, how they'd go low-tech with pagers, but then the Israelis intercepted the pagers, packed them full of C4, I believe, and when they heated up, they blew up. Didn't kill everyone, wounded thousands. Some innocent victims. I'm sorry, it's a tragedy when a child dies. There are reportedly 2 children who died who have got nothing to do with the fact that their parents decided to become terrorists or their uncle's a terrorist. I don't know why Iran's ambassador to Lebanon is carrying a Hezbollah pager, but he was, and he was wounded. And then yesterday, all of Hezbollah's walkie-talkies blew up. So apparently the IDF and Mossad and the rest of the Israeli secret services figured out where they were buying their handheld technology. Pretty soon, they can go Fred Flintstone if they want. And that might be a reference that's lost on many of you. They can go Fred Flintstone. They can refuse to use any technology at all and use carrier pigeons. The Israelis have by the way, a carrier pigeon bomb that was on social media. They don't use that very often, but they do. And the Israelis are not going to lose this war. They're not going to be wiped off the face of the earth. They are forever. And if Iran gets a nuke, I think Israel will end that nuclear program very quickly. I think if they cross that line, they'd better have done breakout with multiple nuclear weapons, because Israel will just stop it. And the United States should help them do so with strategic bombers, because Israel is our ally and Iran is a theocratic regime run by religious fanatics who will welcome the end times. Do you understand that? I actually listened to Sam Harris the other day. I haven't listened to Sam Harris in years. He's just so anti-Christian that I can't stand him. Well, he's mellowed. Now he's just anti-Islamist fanatic, as far as I can tell. But I don't know. So I decided, okay, Dan Senor had him on the Call Me Back podcast. And it's among the 7 podcasts that are among my regular podcasts, non-sports category. And so I listened to Sam Harris, and Sam always reverts to being anti-religion. And he's a wannabe Richard Dawkins, a wannabe Christopher Hitchens, and it's a living. It's a living. It's not normal. It's not rational. There's no one who can look at the created world and not conclude that there is a designer. And if there's a designer, you got to figure out they want to sign their painting. And God signed his painting, and I think it works out pretty easily. Sometimes the painting signature has been left off. Sometimes the painting signature is hard to read. But most serious art historians can find the counterfeits and the reals. And I can find the real, and you can find the real. It's very easy to figure it out if you spend any time. It's not a decoder ring. The argument from design has always been the most persuasive argument. And once you figure out that there is a creator and the creator wants to be known, then you start reading. Read it all. You read every sacred text ever. You're going to end up either Jewish or Christian. If you are serious, you're going to end up either Jewish or Christian. I think you'll end up Roman Catholic. Had a great Protestant theologian tell me, everyone who wants an answer to everything always ends up Catholic because they've got Aquinas and we don't. And that may be the case. I'm born Catholic, cradle Catholic, left for a while, came back. Archbishop Chaput up in Philadelphia, retired now, is the one who took me there. But I'll tell you, it's a matter of watching. So I never much cared about Sam Harris. I debated him once, took him apart, joint by joint. Lee Strobel was the fair arbiter. You can find it on YouTube if you want. It's like 20 years ago. I don't care. Sam Harris can make a living. Christopher Hitchens was my friend, and he was, God is not great. Richard Dawkins been on this show. I don't care. They can't bother my faith. No serious believers' faith is bothered. However, you might change the particulars of your faith if you study, and you should not be a Wahhabist. You ought not to be an Islamist. You ought not to be in Hezbollah or Hamas. You ought not to be a Shia theocrat. But I have lots of friends who are Sunni Muslim who would argue with me theology, and we could do that all day long. I did a series for PBS in 1995-96, Searching for God in America. I talked to Islamic scholar in that, and I think everyone can get along. All you need is the First Amendment guaranteeing no establishment of religion. They have one in Iran. They don't have one in Israel, by the way. They have one in southern Lebanon. They don't have one in Israel, by the way. They have one in Gaza. They don't have one in the United States, by the way. No established religion. We don't want someone being told what they must believe. But we also want the free exercise clause. So we have that in the United States Constitution, and it's going to remain there under President Trump. It's going to be strengthened by a second Trump term and more Trump judges, just like it's been strengthened on the Supreme Court now. And they're going to get around to reversing Employment Division versus Smith, the only bad decision I can think of by Justice Scalia, because it doesn't sufficiently protect the free exercise rights of Americans. But we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So get out there and vote for Trump. Go get my column at Fox News. Send it to all your friends who are on the fence. Send it to Republicans or send to other people who are on the fence. Send it to your family and friends. I want to take the end of this program to do some housekeeping with you. I get too many questions about the variety of ways you can listen or watch my program. First, you can download the Salem News Channel. Just put it on your phone, watch it all day long, and enjoy it. It's also on a lot of stations in local markets across the United States. The Salem News Channel is a wonderful addition to your viewing opportunities. Number two, HughHewitt.com. You can listen live any day, and the show repeats. HughHewitt.com. And we often put up transcripts, like of yesterday's conversation with North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. So if you're a reader and not a listener, that's where you go. 3, Highly Concentrated Hugh is my podcast, and it's available mid-afternoon every day. Harley edits it and puts it up as soon as he can, lickety-split, and it's usually about an hour. Not the whole show. It's a few parts of the show. We don't give the whole show away. You can listen to the whole show in real time with ads on HughHewitt.com, or you can be a member of the Universe and not only get the show without ads, you also get the Air Check, which is a feature. Dwayne and I do a daily off-air program that is the Air Check button on the Universe, but you got to subscribe. The wonderful thing about the subscription to the Universe is not only do you get the Air Check, which many people find funny because Dwayne is occasionally witty and I am always witty, but also the subtext feature is what they love. They love to text me their thoughts, and I read those. I cannot read the gazillion emails that come in at Hugh@HughHewitt.com. That is the open line. Generally, Simo goes through it when he's not hibernating and not losing weight for my PhD weight loss. That is another way. But here's what I really want you to do. I want you to subscribe and like the Hugh Hewitt YouTube channel, because that way we only put up there my monologue and we only put up there my interviews, and the good ones, the ones you don't want to miss, the ones that you know to yourself, I need to listen to Doug Burgum and watch Doug Burgum maybe. Or for example, on Monday when I had Christine Rosen, most of the interview was not on air. All of it was on YouTube, and I parceled out bits of it to pump up the sales of the Experience of Extinction, because I think it could change the way the country... I get no money out of that, by the way. There's nothing in it for me. I just loved the Extinction of Experience by Christine Rosen, and believe it is necessary for the country to become self-aware of the technology before it takes us over. We are being colonized by the technology, some of it infiltrated by our Chi-Com enemies, but a lot of it is just by choice. And the Extinction of Experience is about that, so go and get the book. YouTube does that for you. Finally, but not least, by those of you who have Facebook, there's a Hugh Hewitt Show Facebook page with links to the key stuff. By all means, subscribe to Facebook. I'm not a Facebook guy. That's a deal for Ben and Harley to deal with. And they put the important stuff at Facebook for people who are Facebook friendly. Like and subscribe, as my friends at Ruthless Podcast say. The thing I want you to do is follow me on X, at Hugh Hewitt. I retweet all of the links that you need. I make sure you get every connection to every column I write, whether it's for the Washington Post or for Fox News. I retweet links to every YouTube interview that matters, my monologues. They're all over at HHS links if you just want to go direct to the source, but I retweet them through the day. Now, I want to close with this. Harris warns of mass deportations if detention camps if Trump is elected. Scare stuff. First of all, Donald Trump loved her speech to the Hispanic caucus yesterday. Cut number 44.
Now they have pledged to carry out the largest deportation, a mass deportation in American history. Imagine what that would look like and what that would be.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
And do you know why he approved that message? Because Jerome Powell got a question about the massive immigration of the last 3.5 years and answered it yesterday, cut number 42.
There's been quite an influx across the borders, and that has actually been one of the things that's allowed unemployment rate to rise.
What? You mean they're taking the jobs that Americans do want to do? That's true. They are. And again, I'm a border hawk and a regularization dove. So I just want you to hear again, Jerome Powell, Joe Biden's appointee as chairman of the Federal Reserve, who did him a favor yesterday, said this, cut number 42.
There's been quite an influx across the borders, and that has actually been one of the things that's allowed unemployment rate to rise.
All right, that's all I wanted you to hear, except let's go back to cut 34 a few times. Cut 34, Kamala Harris yesterday.
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
Yeah, she did say that. Play it again.
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
You know, I grew up understanding I was the child of Bill and Marg. Other people could say, hey, Hugh, like my teachers and my priests and my nuns, hey, Hugh, get in line. But I wasn't a child of a community. I was a child of a family. It's a big difference, America. Vote that way.